So here's what we'll do. Right now we have 5 storytellers,
Mhm.
official, and they'll tell their stories. And then if somebody's inspired to tell a story or whatever their version of a story is,
Yeah.
that's cool. We should have plenty of time. And then what I typically do in all of our events, but especially for this one, is afterwards we talk. Because I think often some of these stories lead to interesting conversations, maybe conversations people need to have. And I will remind you of a couple of loose guidelines. If you've seen the event description, there's certain things that in these kinds of spaces, I don't want, just to make sure that it's kind of safe and we're here to support people, but not do the things that, but I know you all mean well. I think non-well-intentioned people don't find this group and don't come to this. So I think most people find it and show up. They're here for the right reasons. Kathy, Shivani, Alex, Courtney, and Jamie, I just want to let you know I see you. And if you have a story, you can either let me know by showing yourself and giving me a thumbs up, or if you're more comfortable using the chat function. Either way, and you don't have to do that now. All right, Patricia, yes. And you don't need, yes. So a reminder, and I know you've all done Zoom things up the yin yang for 2 years now. I'm recording this. It's not live anywhere, but I do this because I think these stories are very important. I want to record them and I will put it out there. And if you don't want me to do that, if the story just doesn't work for you, just don't want the world to see it, let me know and I'll just pause the recording. Nobody will see it. We'll hear it, but nobody else ever will hear it again because that's something I want your permission to do. But if you don't say anything, just so to know, the default is it's recording. Right now, it's just recording me talking a whole lot, like nonstop. Like all he does is talk. Like, when is he going to stop talking? Shut up, Sean. Stop. Enough. If you're wondering, I played a lot of pickleball today, so that's just kind of the space in there. And finally, if your camera is working, we can see you. And if you don't want us to see you, you can go to the top right of your little picture and you can look at those different options. And one of them is to either stop your video or hide your self view. And you can play with those a little bit to how you want to enjoy this. Is that Shivani in Massachusetts? What's up? All right, Shivani, do you have a story?
I do, Sean. I do. But if it's possible, I'd love to see a few other tellers go since this is my first time in this platform.
Right. No worries, of course. And I will remind some of you, and this is very a friendly reminder, because I know some people here have been telling stories a long time. You're on these big main stages. Maybe you're going to things like the Moth and you're slamming, which I respect. This is a slightly different space, or maybe even more than slightly. It's not really about being good or bad, or because we do that a lot. I have groups, right, where we literally give feedback on what could be better. But this is just like, hey, shit's hard sometimes, or off, like maybe all the time. And we just need to talk about it. And for me, story is one of the ways to do it. One of the ways. So I hope that is cool for you all. And I'll just ask, as people tell their stories, that you stay muted. Pretty standard stuff. And if I didn't say hello, I just wanted to make sure I did for the people who I haven't formally spoken to. So Jamie, Kathy, Alex, Courtney, and maybe if you're around later and you want to say hi, you can unmute and we can chat a little bit. Is that cool? Awesome. Does anybody have any questions before we start with Patricia, Iowa?
I have a question.
Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
As I revisited this event,
I
found a wonderful picture. I'd love to show it at the end. Will that be all right?
Of course. And I think you should have permission to share screen. So we'll figure it out if you don't.
Okay.
Yeah. And to answer your question, Lou, yeah. So there's really like 2 parts to this open mic. One is the story stuff. And then afterwards, the conversations. That happened from, or at least in part from the stories. By the way, though, if you're just having like a shitty week, you can vent a little bit. I mean, there's a limit to it, right? Because I don't think people want to hear like 3 hours of venting, but I do think we need spaces to vent a little bit sometimes. At least I do. Maybe that's why I do this in the first place. Wow, I just had this like aha moment. Okay. And that said, Ms. Coffie in the great state of Iowa, would you comfortable starting us off this evening?
I am.
And I'm just going to ask before you do that people mute themselves, or I'll do it for you if I can. And then I'll stop talking and we're here to listen. And I appreciate you being here.
Ready? This story I revisited recently, and I call it I Tried. See, a few years back when I was presenting the case for comparable pay for work of comparable worth, one of the council members asked sarcastically if I had always been a wallflower. And I said, I tried. See, my husband had lost 2 jobs in a row and taken a third one at 3/4 the pay he had been receiving. And so I went back to work full-time as a media specialist. Now, our expenses had continued at 100%. So there was no money extra. We had to have childcare, that second car and all those expenses. There was nothing for a change in wardrobe or any of those silly things. But my husband decided I should have new glasses because I didn't look quite right. I didn't need new lenses. I didn't need new frames. But in that time of tight money, he decided I should have new glasses. And so he sent me to the optometrist and I went. I chose the frames he wanted me to choose. They were the little round metal ones, the wire frames. And I got a new copy of the same old prescription lenses. And when they came in, I went in and had them fitted, and I went home and he didn't like the way they fit on my face. And so he said I should go back and have them adjusted. And I went. The optometrist, the person who does the fittings and all, made some adjustments, and I went home. And my husband did not like the way my glasses fit on my face. And so for the third time, he sent me back to have my glasses adjusted. And I went. And this time, the optometrist himself came out and sat down and said, let me see now if I've got this straight. Your husband does not like the way your glasses fit on your face so that you can see. And then he stopped and we looked at each other and we burst out laughing at the same time. We laughed till tears ran down our faces. And I said, I tell you what, don't make any changes. I'll tell him that you did. And if he still doesn't like them, I'll give my glasses to my husband. He'll bring them in. You can do whatever the heck he says. We laughed and laughed. I went home with the same glasses. He didn't have anything to say. He thought they looked pretty good now. And it was years and years before we realized there was something that didn't fit well. It was he and I. But I tried. Would you like to see the picture?
Absolutely.
I don't know. Have you done something so I can click on it and it will show up?
Mute myself for a moment. You should be able to share your screen. Let me remove you.
Oh, I see down here. It says share screen.
Let's see if I continue to spotlight you. There you go.
Can you see the picture yet?
Yeah.
You look beautiful.
Those were the glasses he didn't like. What do you think?
Mm.
I tried.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. If you can, if you can, you did it for me. Remove the spotlight. Thank you, Patricia. Nice, short, solid story. Patricia, I've heard you tell at least one other story here. It's been a while. I enjoyed that one, just like this one. Nice. Thank you for that. I will be asking you a little bit more about Iowa after, because I'm obsessed with locations, and Corey Thomas Mays in Iowa. He's I'm a big fan of his. And I don't know much about the state. And I want to know more. And I want to know more about that photograph afterwards. I'm wondering where you were when that was taken. I'll wait. Welcome everyone. If you came a little bit late, thank you for being here. I know there's a lot of ways you could be spending your Sunday, so I appreciate you being here. We did this, we started back a year and a half ago. I did not think it was going to make it a year and a half, so I'm really pleased by that. It makes me feel good. I think these stories are important. Our next storyteller is Erica B, and she's in LA land, Tinseltown. And let me spotlight you, Erica, and then you can unmute yourself, and then, believe it or not, I'll stop talking.
Okay, so it's maybe a little clunky because it's a draft. It's like I had part of it and I expanded upon it. So some of it I haven't read out loud at all yet. Okay. I had lived in my Los Angeles neighborhood, Echo Park, for going on 5 years. Unlike most LA neighborhoods, Echo Park is like a small town. We all know each other. But when I have a bad reaction to a medication and I'm sent into a manic episode, I go from the hip, friendly neighbor who chatted with the baristas to the crazy lady outside of the shop who talks to herself. The medicine that had been prescribed for me by a doctor was Adderall, a potent stimulant. I had told the doctor about my bipolar diagnosis and how I had managed and was stabilized on meds, but the depression was still a battle, and he recommended adding the Adderall. But within weeks, I was overcome with psychosis. I see in Technicolor and I wander the streets night and day in my kimono, telepathically communicating with the moon and sun. I become covered in the soot of the city. I've not been home or slept for well over 24 hours. I walk the gated perimeter of Echo Park Lake. There are various species of ducks that live there, but now the park is under construction. The lake is drained and just surrounded by dirt and mud mounds. I'm agitated because the ducks have been robbed of a proper habitat. I vow to the duckies that I will be contacting PETA, and I chant on the corner as people pass by, save the ducks, free the ducks, save the ducks. I head a couple blocks north now to the main drag of Sunset Boulevard. I run past a popular restaurant with outside tables and I pull off a tablecloth, tie it around my neck like a cape, and I run down the street screaming, I'm a superhero. Never fear, I am here to save us from evil political agenda. I enter the indie coffee house with my cape, where I've been a welcome regular for years. I ask for some water at the counter from the young hipster behind the register. The owner, who I have always chatted with, sits off to the side at a table with his kids, and I say hello to them. He tells me to leave his shop. I feel confused, but I do as he says. Later, I end up at a McDonald's, going from table to table, pleading with the customers to join me in a boycott against the evil corporation, McDonald's. I hop onto the silver counter, ranting, I can't do this on my own. I feel the employees are really inspired to go on strike. The police arrive, and I call them assholes, and I end up committed to the psych ward. After many months of treatment, now stable, I returned to my neighborhood, eager to begin my life again. But when people see me, they can't see past that sick woman. Not long after my return, I see the owner of the independent coffee shop, and I suddenly remember that I had made him angry when I said hello to his children. I try to apologize. His eyes are icy. I say, I want to explain. I'm better now. He cuts me off. I'm not interested. Just stay out of my shop. And I'm filled with self-hatred. Over the course of the next year, even though my psychosis is under control, I'm feeling extremely depressed. Who was ever going to love me? A common question, an endless question that raced through my mind. Who would ever want to be involved with a person who is mentally ill? My psychiatrist encourages me to volunteer somewhere to help get me back out into the world. So I signed up for volunteer training at a nonprofit just a few blocks from my apartment that offers writing classes to neighborhood kids. A few days later, I receive an email from the organization asking whether I might be willing to come in for a chat. I had been recognized as the crazy lady of Echo Park. Although mortified, I forced myself to go in, determined to get my life going in the right direction again. When the volunteer coordinator greets me, I'm nervous. I want to look normal, say things that will show him I'm just like him. I explain what happened. And after, without judgment, he smiles warmly. And for the first time in a long time, I feel seen. He says he's so glad that I'm okay and that they would love for me to volunteer. And in the next 6 years, I work with kids at the nonprofit. And by helping them find their voices and build their confidence, I found and rebuilt mine. On my way home, I pass Echo Park Lake. It's been returned to its splendor. Construction completed, transformed. The lotus blossoms bloom again. The ducks swim, the geese graze. The fountain in the center of the lake shoots up in the clear blue sky. The sun creates a rainbow in the mist. And it has become entirely apparent that if you're going to lose your mind, the best place to do it is in your own neighborhood.
Thank you, Erica. I think I've heard either versions of that, right? Or parts of it in other stories. Nice. Interesting. How do you feel after telling that? I'm curious.
Vulnerable and exposed, but but I feel like it worked better than I thought. Because I was really editing up to the last second.
Yeah.
I wonder though, somewhere it dragged maybe in certain points. So I'll have to play with it.
You can come to the Friday thing. That's where we go feedback. No feedback on story stuff tonight.
Yeah.
We can talk about the content of it, but in a sort of, we'll do that afterwards. Because I think people, as a reminder, if you have a question or something you want to share with Patricia, Erica, or the other storytellers, maybe just jot it down. You could also use the chat. By all means, use the chat function now. But if you want to wait a little bit after we're done, we talk about it a little bit. Whoever wants to hang out and talk. And again, whatever comes up, and this is primarily directed to the tellers, but you don't have to answer any questions or go there if you don't want to, but it's up to you. I tend to assume that if you put a story together and you share it with some strangers, that you're probably open to talking, but it's of course up to you. I got a story, Erica, or something I'm going to share afterwards about my experience with Adderall, how much I loved it. And I think that's what sent me I think that was the difference maker for me going there too.
Yeah, very cool. Well,
Scary.
thanks.
It's just chemicals. It's so scary. It's like chemical. What's happening?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah. No. 100%. We have got a storyteller out of Queens. Her name is Tracey. I know Tracey. Some of us
Hello.
know Tracey. And Tracey, I'm going to spotlight you so we can see your pretty face, and then you'll start whenever you're ready.
Okay. So this is a little clunky because it's a draft. It was a beautiful summer night on Jen's back deck. Jen and Patty were cackling with laughter, but I was seething. They hadn't started out interrupting me on purpose. It was just because they were drunk and kind of silly and a little out of control, so that every time I started talking, they started talking. But then they saw how frustrated and angry I was getting, and then it became a game. So they would start conversations that they knew that I was interested in to draw me in. And every time I opened my mouth to say a word, then they opened their mouth to say a word too. And as soon as they saw my face get contorted, they started to laugh and high five. And so I sat there in silence eventually, because the game that they were playing, the game, whatever it was that they had invented, they won. And I sat there looking at my husband thinking, what the fuck is going on here? This isn't the first incident like this that's happened lately. We were 40 years old, but this was unmistakably bullying. My husband and I had spent the entire day at Jen's house babysitting her son. We took him out to lunch and for ice cream. We bought him a toy. We played with him all day, which, by the way, she hadn't asked me to do. She demanded it. She called me up and said, Trey, I need you to babysit Ryan for the day. And I did, because that's what I did. Jen was my best friend in high school. She'd been my best friend since high school. And Patty was someone we were friends with in high school, but hadn't seen in about 20 years. And so she popped up about 2 years before. And when she did, she seemed angry that Jen and I were still friends, had been friends, that we'd been present for each other these past couple of decades in all the important parts of our lives. And she seemed determined to displace me. And I thought, Jen's not going to fall for this childish behavior, this obnoxious flattering, this unnecessary social media tagging, these gatherings that I was brazenly uninvited to. But she did, like a teenager being courted by a movie star. She lapped it up. She loved the attention. And I started to feel unmoored, because when the person who's been your companion for 25 years is suddenly removed from you, you lose your balance. And it was something that Jen didn't seem to be able to see. And so as we sat there that night on Jen's back deck, and I was feeling frustrated and angry and embarrassed, my husband finally said, you know what, I think it's time to go home. And I said, yes, I think it is. Jen said, well, she seemed to snap to for a moment. She said, well, you're not leaving already, are you? And I said, yeah, I think we are. And I went upstairs to use the bathroom. And while I was upstairs, she said to my husband, I hope she's not upset. We didn't mean anything by it. We were just having fun. I'm sorry. And he said, well, we'll tell her. When we came downstairs, Jen said goodnight. When I got in the car, my husband asked me if she had apologized to me. And I said, no, she hadn't. She just said goodnight. And he said, well, she apologized to me. The next day she called me, and I could tell she was sort of trying to feel me out, but no apology came. And as time went on, she kept me around for things like, Trey, can you rewrite my resume? And Trey, can you babysit my kid? And Trey, you make a pan of mushrooms for the party I have coming up? But with Patty, She invited Patty over for Sunday dinner. She invited Patty to the baseball game with her family. She went out to a Broadway play with Patty. I seemed to be the help, and Patty seemed to be the fun. And as it was going on, there didn't seem to be anything that I could do to stop it, nor any way I could convince anybody that it was going on. And that night on Jen's back porch was the last time I was ever on Jen's back porch, because I was never invited there again. And shortly thereafter, that was the end of my 25-year friendship with Jen, without any explanation, without a fight, without a curse or a swear word thrown at us. It was just over. And Patty was her new friend, just like we were in high school, as if it had never ended. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thanks, Tracey. If you're wondering, by the way, if some of you might be wondering why some of the storytellers are saying like, this is just a draft, I'm working on it. We have some of it's my stuff, some of it's other people we know, like we're working on stories and we go to groups and get feedback. So there's some real story geeks in this group. That's a good thing. So that's what that means. If that sounds like, what are they talking about? And you're welcome to come to them. Mine, and there's a couple others. I'm happy to share more about that if that's something you want to do. By the way, Tracey, I hear a lot of stories, so apologies if I get this wrong, but wasn't there another story you shared somewhat recently about another meeting? It was with family. And you told this to the public, so I'm going to share it. And there was sort of a similar familial betrayal, for lack of a better, right?
Something like that, yeah.
Wow, you've had a tough run.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Same year. That happened the same year.
Wow. That's a shitty year.
Yeah.
Maybe, or at least that part of it. Man. Huh. Maybe there were some good parts to the year. I don't know. By the way, if you came in a little late and I didn't ask, Kat, Linda, maybe a couple others, if you have a story, let me know. You just put your hand up or put it in the chat. I'm happy to add you. We've already heard from Patricia, Erica, Tracey. They told stories. We've got Anthony, Barbara, and Shivani. If they still want to, I would love to hear their stories. I think we all would. And then we're going to talk a little bit. Let me just check the chat because someone might have messaged me there too. Okay, cool. All right, Linda, I hear you. Linda in WV. We're going to go down to Georgia. That's why I don't sing. Where are you, Anthony? There he is. Dottie, don't make fun of my voice. You know that I'm super insecure. Come on. All right. Anthony, it's first of all, Anthony, thanks again for being here. And I'm going to mute myself and we're going to hear you. Thanks again, man.
Okay, I'm a little rusty at storytelling, so forgive me if it's a little choppy, but this is an oldie. This occurred around summer 2013, and just another weekday, and I'm driving to work to a job which I loathe, and it's a high pressure tech support job, which was the best I could find during shortly after a recession. Just playing the radio and just kind of thinking of random things on the 20-minute journey. But then just two things start kind of dog fighting in my mind. The first is this meme I read, or quote by Frank Zappa, that said something like, if you're unhappy because you listen to preachers, the teachers, and the grown-ups, and now you're in an unhappy dead-end job, well, that's on you. And it's like, yeah, I'm kind of happy. I don't like the job, but it pays the bills, or it's adequate. And then another thought that dog was doing a dog fight in my head was I went to 2 funerals that year. I lost my eldest sister to an unspecified respiratory problem. She was about 13 years older than me. And then it was preceded by the death of my second oldest sister, who died in a car accident. And I mean, I, grieved and went through some extreme emotions, but I felt fine. I'm 43, I'm alive, my health is good, and I got a job, I'm in a happy marriage, and there's absolutely nothing to worry about. Except the sensation that's coming up the back of my neck, like, someone has put a hot hand in the back of your hand and is slowly grasping it. And then this other sensation of like my face going flush and my vision's blurring and the song on the radio, which I don't remember, distorting. And that's like, this has happened before. Oh, this is so weird when this happens. Okay, this is not so bad. I'll shake it off like the other day. I'll go in a room and take a few deep breaths. I'm fine. I don't know. It's just some condition or something. Should go to a doctor. And then I realized like there was red. I was seeing literal red. It was like the corners of my eye, the vision was red, the road, the signs, the overpass, the exit I just passed and went to work. I'm like, okay, you know what? I'm going to use a sick day because I just not feeling work today. But you know what? Something is really going on. I don't know if I'm just having an allergy attack or something. So I drive my walk-in clinic and I describe my symptoms. And they said, do you want to sit down a moment? Like, I'm fine. It's like, I'm like that. I'm like, I'm fine. I am fine. Do you understand? I am fine. There's nothing wrong with me. Mental illness does not run in this family. And it's like, sir, we can call you an ambulance, or if you can't, are you able to drive yourself? Because I think you're having some sort of attack right now, or maybe a heart attack or heart palpitation. This might be preceding a heart attack. I'm like, okay, well, I've never been in an emergency room. So I drive. I don't know, I remember how I got there. I'm starting to calm down a bit, maybe a bit, hospitals are usually disassociating for me, but I'm kind of glad to be there because maybe they could tell me what's going on and why this episode keeps happening. Take my blood pressure, it's elevated. My vitals are elevated. Everything is into pretty much that dot is pretty much spiking pretty high on that monitor to the left of me. And fine, I call my wife and she rushes over. But in the minutes before, the doctor came in and says, all right, well, we don't think you're having a heart attack, but sir, do you have a history of panic attacks? Like, you mean what just happened? That happens a lot. That just seems normal for me. Cause I mean, yeah, sometimes I have to go to a party and drink, half my weight just to be able to be there and not flee from the room. Sometimes I got to be have to get up and walk out of a room where I think the ceiling's going to collapse on me. I mean, this is completely normal. It's a basically wide fucked up world. I mean, who doesn't feel like this? I mean, this is normal. I think it's a perfect, healthy reaction to my life and this year and everything that's happened to me. So you're saying I have mental illness? Well, I'm not one to diagnose, but I think you need to follow up with a psychiatrist or a psychiatrist, sorry, tongue-tied. This is definitely signs of a panic attack. Like, panic attack. Complete wimps have panic attacks. Women have panic attacks. Hysterical, weak men have panic attacks. I don't have panic attacks. Mental illness not run in the family. Born again, filled with the Holy Ghost, for Christians do not have mental illness. So a month later on the psychiatrist's bench, and they said, you have a very low level, probably manageable, generalized anxiety disorder, like generalized. It's like we're going to work on what specific triggers, but I'm going to leave the option to you if you want to go on SSRIs at this point. But and I realized that reviewing my life, having suddenly crying fits in class when I was a child, or all the little incidents, dozens of incidents, having what I thought were just rage fits. I mean, come on, who doesn't just needs to grab a stack of dishes and start frisbeeing them against the wall? It felt good. It relieved a lot of pressure. So that began a process of, the other things that went wrong, that were always wrong. And that's something for other stories, but since I don't know if I'll see you again, I have been diagnosed with severe ADHD. So it was kind of like the first revelation of the problems I've been having all my life. Thank you.
Thanks, Anthony. Appreciate that. I hope I see you again. I know, but you're keeping it real. We may not, but it would be great. Thank you very much for that. I know I said I wouldn't comment on people's stories like the craft, but you said you're rusty. I want to see you when you're not rusty, Anthony. Bam. Hello. Appreciate that, bud.
I guess just, yeah, if you haven't been in practice, I guess it's just I used to do it regularly, and then the pandemic occurred, and
sure. I guess it's a sort of thing like riding a bike. It comes back. I know Zoom's weird.
It was really nervous. I mean,
yeah.
Practice and write it down again. I got flooding tongue tied.
Sure. Yeah, man. I gotta say, and if you can stick around, I that just a lot of the things you said so resonated for me anyway. And I'm imagining others too. I remember going through a period of my life where I remember having these conversations, and I was like, oh no, everyone doesn't do that. That's not like a common thing that everybody or most people do. It was like news to me. Like that's not how people deal with the world and cope. So anyhow, thanks again, man. Appreciate it. We are moving right along. So just as a reminder, we have Barbara, then Shivani, then Linda. If you change your mind and you don't want to go, that's okay. And if you change your mind and you do want to go, like Chandreyee, then we're going to add you to the list. Chandreyee doesn't get till last just because she has blue hair. It just worked out that way. That's a story for another day. By the way, y'all, I remind everybody always on these, at least once, I've got this podcast, and I let people know about it because it's kind of important for me. It's related to mental health. It's called Suicide Noted. Some of you know it. I talk to suicide attempt survivors. It's literally called Suicide Noted, Noted. If that's something you might benefit from hearing. The beauty of podcast is for most people, not everybody, it's right there. So this is not my weird, like nefarious way of getting more listeners. I just think if that will help you, then please listen. And if you ever want to be a guest, if that applies to you, then let me know. Cool. Barbara in the Chicagoland area. I'm not asking if you're a Cubs or a White Sox fan because I don't really care. You ready?
I don't care either. Yes, I am. And if, like Patricia, if I may, at the end, I'd like to show a picture.
Yeah, sure.
And like everybody, this is a work in progress.
It's all good. I love these new like multimedia stories with the picture. Yeah. Everything's a work in progress, Barbara. All right.
Yeah. I'm stuck up to my 9-year-old's knees in the cold, silky muck on the bottom of Lily Lake, a place we kids come to swim and play in the summer. I'm 10 feet beneath the surface with long corkscrewed strands of seaweed entangling my arms and torso, the water pressure painfully squeezing against my ears. I'm disoriented and I desperately need to breathe. I was nearly out of air when some larger kid, oblivious to my presence as I began to ascend for my own dive, jumped off the floating swim platform, landing on top of me, his feet shoving me down from the warmer surface water into the cold lake bed. I'm mired in cold muck, seaweed, and fear. Being low on air has robbed me of the buoyancy and the ability to float upwards that I take for granted. I try to push off from the bottom, but it's as firm as pudding. I finally wriggle one leg out and then the other, and tearing my way out of the embrace of the seaweed, I fiercely paddle with my arms. I can barely see through the turbid, khaki-colored water made murkier by my feet stirring up the lake bed, and hardly any light penetrates from the surface to indicate which way is up, but I figure it must be in the opposite direction of my feet. As I swim, I begin to see the sunlight filtering down in the silhouette of the platform, and it becomes a race as to whether water or air will fill my lungs. I break through the surface and grab onto one of the rungs of the platform's ladder and greedily suck in air, like a newborn taking its first breath. I haven't thought about this near drowning experience in decades, yet I'm surprised I still have vivid sense memories of the event, and that it resurfaces after a friend calls me to tell me that Mike, the wonderful therapist who midwifed me through my mid-40s midlife crisis, committed suicide last October at the age of 52. After the call and a good cry, I lose myself in memories of Mike and of our sessions together. I'll always be grateful to Mike for our journey together and for one of the most memorable and useful things anyone has ever said to me. About a year into the 3 years I will be in therapy with him, and after several disappointing romantic encounters, I bemoan how hard it is to find someone. How come all my friends are happily paired off? I'm feeling something must be fundamentally wrong with me. I mean, really, really wrong. In response, he gently asks, well, why should it be any different for you? This simple question shakes me out of the illusion that finding love, a good partner, is something that should just happen if I wasn't so flawed. And this question has become a calming mantra for me whenever I'm frustrated with some commonplace inconvenience or feeling uniquely put upon by circumstances out of my control. And now I try to understand once again the mystery of why someone, anyone, as gifted with intelligence, heart, and humor and love as Mike, chose to abbreviate his life story. I grieve for all the things that Mike will miss from this moment on. Mike will never see his 3 sons, now in their 20s, marry and have his grandkids. He'll never again feel the touch of the wife he has loved for over 30 years. They'll never make love again. Then I grieve how the world is now deprived of someone wonderful, a gentle, shining beacon of wisdom who unselfishly gave it away to many lost, misguided people. I wonder, what kind of despair is it that can overpower someone's curiosity about how their life will unfold, or cause them to feel their life isn't a miraculous gift anymore, but a curse or a burden? And then I return to the memory of being pushed down into the cold muck at the bottom of Lily Lake. I might have died had I not been as strong a swimmer or been knocked unconscious by the kids jumping on me. Many things beyond my control may have led to a different and less happy ending for me. This memory returns, I think, to give me some visceral understanding of where Mike found himself last October, stuck in some psychic muck that held him in place at his emotional bottom. The weight of his depression, so great, he lost his emotional buoyancy and couldn't find his way back up. And with no lifeline in sight and tired of fighting and out of breath, he chose to end the struggle. And it also brings me back to Mike's question of, why should it be any different for me? I don't believe I will ever take my natural emotional buoyancy for granted. This is Mike's posthumous and most valuable life lesson. Thank you, Mike.
Thanks, Barbara.
Yeah. I want to show his picture.
Oh yeah, of course. Let me spotlight you. I don't know if it makes a difference because I don't know, shockingly, I don't know Zoom that well yet.
Oh, that's okay. I just
sure that we can see it. Yeah.
No, I'm gonna make it my virtual background and then back out of the picture.
All right. Well, thanks again for sharing that with us.
He was so wonderful.
Oh yeah. Mm.
Okay, now I gotta change it. Where are you? There you are.
Here we go.
I got a little lost there. Hold on.
Move your spotlight. We'll work out the text stuff.
Thank you. I'm so sorry.
Yeah, now you're not, we can't see you, but that's okay.
Oh yeah, because I shut it off. There we go. I'm a blur now. I'm back to my normal blur.
Me too. That's how we roll, me and you, Barbara. We're blurry.
Can
you
I
guys don't like it? I'm sorry. We're not changing. We're blurry.
Yeah.
What were you gonna say, Barbara? Sorry.
Well, if we're gonna chat afterwards, it's about the therapy thing. Okay. I'll wait till then.
Yeah. That's great. Thank you again. Appreciate it. Whenever the S word comes up, my ears perk up. I know that sounds weird, but I spend a lot of time in that space and I'm like, oh, okay. Shivani, are you here? Shivani's here. Shivani's up in Massachusetts, not for long. We'll hear about that later if she can stick around, but that's not why she's here. She's here to tell a story. Well, I met Shivani actually when I was up in Boston. It's now been a Waltham. It's been a few months already. That was a really fun weekend. Nobody cares about that because they're here to hear you, Shivani. So I'm going to stop talking and take it away.
Perfect. Thanks, Sean. So I majored in supply chain management for college. It's getting things in the right place at the right time. And so when my mother unexpectedly passed away, September of 2018, I got into operation mode. My mother lived in Auburn, Alabama, and unlike other cultures and communities where you talk to your parents on what they'd like to do when they leave this world, Hindus have a pretty strong checklist. There are certain Hindu rituals that must be conducted when someone passes. And so here I was in Auburn, Alabama, trying to arrange the funeral rites, the last rites of my mother. And I found the flower garlands from New Jersey. I ordered the catering from an Indian restaurant in Montgomery, Alabama. I booked blocks of rooms in Auburn, Alabama for her extended family to visit. I made sure the Hindu priest knew the directions to the funeral parlor. I talked to the funeral parlor about having fire inside of their facility. All things that came very easy to me, and it gave me something to do. And so then the funeral was over, and I went back to Greenville, South Carolina. I was in the process of buying a new home, closed on that. I was getting my MBA part-time, and I was graduating that December, and I did it. And I went to conferences and I did my stand-up. I'm a storytelling comedian. And often the subject matter is my parents, my mom. Some people looked at me and asked, how can you do it? How can you tell stories about your mom that has passed away? And then it hit me. My mom had passed away. And it really hit me when I went to Canada in May. So I'm originally from Guelph, Ontario, Canada. That's where I was born and raised. And outside of Guelph in Toronto is the largest diaspora of Sri Lankan Tamils in the world outside of Sri Lanka. So it has this air of familiarity, clothes and foods and family. And as much as my community tries to support those that are grieving, tact is not one of their strong points. An uncle came to me and said, "Oh, it's so sad. Your mother died before she could see you get married." And another person would say, "You know, you should just move on. You had her for 32 years. And then it hit me like a rock when I got home. I couldn't get out of bed. I didn't have any purpose in life. I wasn't motivated to go to work. I was at an utter low. And I conveyed it to my family, who told me, just pray about it. It was her time. God wanted this to happen. But those words didn't soothe the lack of motivation, the despair that I had. I was super down, and I went to lunch with some of my very good friends. And I told them, guys, I'm not okay. And I told them how I was feeling. And although it had been several months since my mother had passed, the grief had settled in. It was time to focus on something that I had put off because the supply chain operations were already done. I had got everything in the right place. I had done everything in the right amount of time. I had completed all the deliverables that needed to happen for my mother's passing. But in that moment, my friends told me, what about yourself? What you're feeling is something that you should be feeling, and you should be talking to someone about it. And there are things that are going to help. It's not going to bring your mother back, but it's almost like it's raining outside. And instead of getting wet, you have an umbrella. It's still raining, but you're protected under that umbrella. And so in that moment, when I was having lunch with these friends and they shared with me their own personal struggles with mental health, I realized that that was the right place, that was the right time, and that was just the right things that I needed. Thank you.
Thanks, Shivani. A reminder to check the chat. People are showing all sorts of love and support to the tellers. It's good. I'm glad that we reconnected here.
Thanks.
And that you're open and willing to share that. Thank you. I'll take the spotlight off now so as not to make it anymore. Go back to gallery mode, non-spotlighted for a few moments. I'm like hosting / looking at the chat as well, because I think the chat is kind of a fascinating space of communication. Probably someone's writing a PhD or doing a PhD on that, like Zoom chat. What it means, what it doesn't mean, what it says about you, what your chat says about your love life. What? I'm just spitballing here. Before I introduce our 7th of 8 storytellers, who's yet another lovely human being, just let you all know, and some of you know this, most Sundays we have an event of some kind, not all of them. Next week we have something called Flash, which is, if you can imagine, like story and improv kind of converging. A couple weeks after that, we have a slam, a competitive storytelling event just for 99-second stories, like little stories. Some of you know about that. So if that's interesting to you, there's a bunch of ways you can find me or Grit. And if you're on the, you already know all this shit, so I don't need to sell you anything, but just want to remind you that that's out there. Sunday night story is your thing. All right, Ms. Linda in the great state of not East Virginia, because a lot of people get this wrong. It's not East Virginia. Nope. West Virginia. All right, you have to unmute yourself, and then I'm going to mute myself. Are your audio is a little weird. Can you? You've been having audio stuff, haven't you, lately?
Yeah, I have.
Are you in a microphone? You might want to use your computer's audio and not a microphone.
It is. Yeah.
But is it your computer's microphone or is it an external microphone like this one? Because that could be the problem.
I don't know.
All right. Well, I want to hear your story, but it's really hard. I assume it's hard for everybody as well. It's not just me. Is that right for everybody?
If there's another, go ahead. Okay.
Do you have a phone you can use maybe?
I have a phone, but I doubt I can get everything connected on this.
Right. All right. So I'm gonna hop over to Chandreyee, okay? And then hopefully you can work it out. And then yeah. 'Cause I can hear some of you, but it's kind of in and out, okay? Okay. Well, let me find Chandreyee. There she is. Chandreyee, you good? Awesome. Okay. I'm gonna mute myself and we want to hear your story.
Thank you, guys. I don't really have a story. I'm really here because I really wanted to see Sean, and I think he's in the area that I need to talk to. Shivani's here holding me up. A bunch of my friends are here, and I haven't seen you guys in a long time. So bear with me. It's not really a story, but it's a mental health happy hour, and I think it would be good for me to talk to you guys. So I'm making this shit up as I go along. I'm gonna tell you about 24 years ago, when I was suddenly taken with a year of a low temperature and weight loss and just crappy all feelings at one of the most wonderful times of my life. I had just emigrated to America from India. I'd come to grad school. I'd met this wonderful man. I was head over heels in love, and I was really, really sick. and no one knew what was going on. And I did this little pub crawl of doctor to doctor as a graduate student with no money, and they didn't know. And they kept saying they thought it was psychosomatic in my head. They tested everything that they could test and some things that they couldn't. And it turned out the catch-all phrase is chronic fatigue syndrome. And that was that. And it was awful. I remember being in the shower, not being able to stand up, having to lie down in the bathtub as the needles of warm water beat down on me, stinging my face because I didn't have the strength to even sit up. But I put my teeth together because apparently there was nothing really wrong with me. I didn't have leukemia. I wasn't going to succumb. It was this weird autoimmune thingy-mabobber, and I fought back and I beat it. You know, chronic fatigue syndrome bit me and I bit it back in the ass. And then fast forward, my life's been really good. I've had some wonderful, wonderful things happen to me. 24 years ago, 23 years later, COVID happened, and the alpha wave, it turns out, bit me. It took me a while to bite it back, but I want to tell you about the moment that I landed up in the ER for the second time. So what is it, like 2 years ago, almost exactly to this date? Because wasn't it, this is 22. Time has lost all meaning, hasn't it, in this pandemic? But 2 years ago, I couldn't breathe. It was one of those things where I kept testing negative, but this was my second trip back to the ER because I wasn't being able to breathe. I had all the textbook symptoms. And I remember lying in the bed. I had driven myself. I didn't let my husband drive because I just didn't want him to. And remember the doctor doing that brain tickle swab, you know, where they poke around, they put this foot-long thing up your nose. And he said, listen, and remember tests were in their infancy back then. And he said, I don't really care what it says. You probably have COVID. And I was there because I was having a lot of chest pain and I couldn't breathe and an oxygen mask and everything. And I remember that the 20 minutes it took for them to process the test, I remember just breathing deep from that oxygen mask and praying. And I'll give a prize to anybody who can guess what I was praying for. Because I was praying for positive results. I knew you would know. I wanted to hear what was positive because I was flashing back to 24 years ago and they couldn't do anything for me. And apparently there was nothing wrong with me. I just was wanting to not live because I was so sick. And I let myself fall asleep. The test results came back. The doctor, who was very handsome, by the way, I remember him, came back and said, it's negative, but it's not. You go home and you do this, that, and the other. If you ever get in trouble with breathing, your oxygen levels are back up. You come back right here. You know where we are. And I fought despair all the way back, thinking I bit something in the ass before. I'm gonna do it again. And I did. And I beat the alpha. I stayed out of the hospital. I was fine. I had a little bit of long COVID, stupid little things, nothing major. I'm really lucky, like I said, but a really good life. And I'm going to continue to have a good life. And so now is the last part of my little so-called story, where this January, I started developing this, oh God, this is so TMI, but bit of a rash on my shoulders, itchy, but really nasty, like not the kind of rash you get from an allergy, blisters, pain, bleeding, creeping everywhere. And then within a few weeks, it was inside my mouth, my gums, the inside of my cheek, blisters that popped, and I slowly started losing the skin. And this is all just a few weeks ago. And I went from doctor to doctor as this time they weren't as clueless. They did a biopsy and they figured out I have a nice little collection of autoimmune diseases going, and number 3 is called lichen planus. It's like where your immune system attacks your own skin. So I have this wonderful little thing. But the news flash was, this time they weren't telling me I was thinking that I was making it up, but this time they told me there's nothing they can do about it, except if things get really, really bad, they'll get me a very high dose of a medication. And things got very bad. About 3 weeks ago, I was at the point where I would talk and there'd be blood coming down my teeth because there's no skin inside my mouth. I'm sorry, Sean, I didn't tell you all this before. But so the good thing was I went to the dermatologist and he was like, okay, it's time. We're going to give you, I think, I'm sure some of you know about this medicine called prednisone, which is like the surface to air missile, pardon the war analogy, for autoimmune diseases. It shuts down your immune system. And they put me on it thinking the usual recovery time for this lovely thing that I have is 2 years. And I can't think of living for 2 years like this. So that's what happened. And now I'm in the home stretch. Bear with me. I think I'm overextending my time, but they put me on super high doses, which was really awful. Gave me palpitations. It's got a bunch of stupid side effects. I have what they call moon face. My face is nice and round from the medication, but oh my God, it stopped my effing my immune system, and my rash was gone, and I have new skin now. I was eating pasta as I talked to you, and it feels like a celebration that I'm eating. Except tomorrow's my last dose, and then wean me off, and my rash is back. And as of this morning, I'm bleeding a little bit again. But this is not where I end, because last week, the big reveal here is that the only thing that will apparently help me in this disease is controlling my stress, which is just an ass backwards things to say. Right? You're going to be in excruciating pain. There's nothing we're going to be able to do for you. Try not to stress, Chandreyee. So along those lines, one of those days when I was trying really hard not to stress, and I knew all this crap was coming, big thing that happened in my life recently, I turned 50. My birthday decorations are still up. Something had been brewing in my head between what happened 24 years ago when apparently I was thinking up my disease, between COVID, not testing positive, and I've had a bunch of other issues health-wise. I just reached the end of my tether with all this fucking bullshit that apparently I have no control over. And I can't control any of this, but you know what I could control? And wait for it. I can control the things I do. And so I turned to my husband and I said, I turned 50 and there's nothing I can do about losing the skin in my mouth and apparently not being able to get better for 2 years. But do you know what I haven't done? I've never taken a solo trip. And so in the middle of all this bullshit that's going on, I have booked myself a 4-day trip to Norway with me, myself, and I at the beginning of May. And it's possible that my mouth is going to get messed up after I stop my meds tomorrow because I'm a little sore today. But do you know what I have done? I put a silver bullet through my stress. I'm doing something I've never done before. Those in this group who know me know that I'm a total extrovert. Traveling alone is not my thing, and I'm going to do it. And I picked my dream town in Norway that I've always wanted to see. And I booked an Airbnb and I'm packing some nice heels. I'm going to take myself out to dinner and I'm going to go on a hike and I'm going to do things on my term while I wait for my immune system to stop attacking myself. And I'm never, ever going to let anyone tell me again that it's in my mind or that there's nothing I can do about it. There's fucking everything I can do about it. And I'm going to be okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. That was awesome.
Norway.
Going to Norway. Great. That sounds awesome. Norway. Always the winner in the Winter Olympics. Always. They always win the Winter Olympics. They're a small country. Now you might be thinking, Sean, I just told this heartfelt story. I'm super vulnerable. I'm not feeling well. Why are you talking about the fucking Winter Olympics, dude? But that's just where my brain went. That's where I went.
And that's why you're telling it. And thank you for telling me. And I'm going to tell you all my adventures when I come back.
Right. No, it's good to see you again, really. And I have, not that when people tell a story, I have to then come up with something to say or have my own experience, but I will say this, man, the conversation around all things immune / and maybe this is a slightly unfair or inaccurate / invisible illness. Oh man, for perhaps a conversation for another day, or maybe afterwards, we'll see what time. Last few weeks ago, I got one of my thing. It's only like 3 days short. I have learned that when I get hit, it's going to go away. But when you're in it, that's really hard to like remember. You just want to fucking put your fucking holes in the wall. Oh, Anyway, I empathize. I don't know if that helps you at all, but yeah, man. Oof. And you haven't gone to a different hair color, which I think is a good call. I like your hair.
No. Do you remember everyone remembers
Purple.
my line from one of the Suicide Noted show or some show that I did for you where I said, my hair is blue, but I am not.
Well, I don't remember that. That's a great line.
It was a good line.
How long
Thanks.
has it been? How long has it been blue?
COVID.
Wow.
I got sick that ER trip. Oh, that's when I first said I'm doing things on my own term, didn't I?
Oh, I just changed. Did I just change your story by my inquiry?
You did? I love it. Thank you. And thank
a
you for
gift.
the space, Sean. I was feeling
Okay.
really bad today, and this has been really great. Thank you.
Awesome.
I love you.
Oh, I love you too. Thank you. That is, that's cool. Thanks. Kat Dean is here. Kat's actually not a neighbor, but relative to all of you who almost live in Mars, she's a neighbor. And then Linda, we're going to try to work you in if we can. I don't know if you're here. I don't know if your internet is weird, if your interwebs are working. Kat, you want to unmute? I'll spotlight you and we can hear your story. Cool.
Sure.
All right. Off we go.
All right, and this is something I haven't worked on much, but I did a long time ago anyway, but you guys made me think of it. I'm 19 years old and a University of North Carolina student. And today is an exam day. I'm sitting in room 321 of Green Law Hall, an English class, and there are 3 questions on the board in front of me. And I'm supposed to write in my own words, my own opinion about the subject at hand, which is what I do. I write and I give my opinion. This should be an absolute breeze for me. But in this moment, I'm staring at those 3 questions and I have no idea what any of the words mean, not what the questions mean. Each individual word is swirling around in my head in random order, and I can't seem to get a grasp on what the hell I'm supposed to do. And I sit and I stare, waiting for something to come along to calm me down, but it just keeps getting bigger. My hands have started sweating to the point where I can't hold my pen anymore, and my ears are ringing, and I can feel the heat in the room. It's like, is nobody else noticing that this room is like a freaking oven? And I'm sweating. I can't. That's literally all the words my mind could think were, I can't. Not even anything in particular that I couldn't do. And I sit there getting deeper and deeper and deeper until I don't even know what I'm afraid of. I'm not afraid of anything except that somehow my soul is going to get sucked out of my body into some eternal hell that I can't get out of, which is what this room is like to me. And I finally make a decision. I start cramming my pencils and my papers into my backpack. Fuck it. I have an A in this class, and the minute I leave this room, I flunked it. That's it, but it's okay. I'm gonna go flunk this exam. Pick up my backpack, and I'm stomping towards the door. And by then, the students have all figured out something's going on with me, and they're all watching to see what happens. And I can feel that some things are falling out of my backpack, but fuck it. I don't need them. Whatever they are, I don't need them. And I get to the door and I put my hand on the doorknob, and one coherent thought, the first one in a long time, enters my head. The minute I set one foot out in that hallway, it's over. It's done. Class is done, and I flunked it. And if I go back and write anything on that paper, anything at all, it's better than flunking it. If I get a 10 on this exam or a 20 on this exam, that's better than flunking. I have nothing to lose by going back. So with as much dignity as I can, I turn back around and I walk to my desk and I put my paper back on my desk and I pick up my pen and I start reading the questions. Sometimes anxiety and panic attacks win, and I end up having something that is dear to me wash out, and I fail at it. but it didn't happen this day. And that's a win.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Kat. Thank you, Kat. Dean, Carborough, North Carolina, mother of two. I have heard a version of that story. I always enjoy it. Thank you very much. So those are our 8 storytellers, and a maybe on Linda, who is having some tech issues. She will say it's because she's in rural West Virginia. I will agree. Linda, do you want to give it a shot, or we can sort of go into our Q&A section? What do you think? Hang on, I can't hear you at all because you're muted. So let's start there. No, you're shaking your head no. Okay. All right, it's cool. It's cool. And even as we talk, even if it's more of a loose telling of it in 20 minutes, that's fine. So cool. Thank you, everyone. I really appreciate it. I am going to ask, we could do this a couple ways. Everyone could unmute. I will say when everyone's unmuted and we just start, there's a lot of crosstalk and it's impossible. So it might be easier, though a little annoying, to do the whole like hand icon thing, and I can facilitate it as best I have. Oh, Sharon, hang on. Yep, hang on one sec. Hang on, Sharon. Yep, you can tell. Give me 1 minute. I'm prepping people for the Q&A. If you didn't see the event description in Facebook and/or Eventbrite, there is a fairly long list of things that I ask people not to do because they're really annoying. And I feel they are not good for conversation and for holding space and being kind. And so I will review them, just, but you all get it. I know that. But Sharon Eisner's here. We didn't intend on the last 2 storytellers being North Carolinians, but we are happy that it worked out that way. And if you have never been to North Carolina, we're going to do something on May 1st, an event. Maybe you can come if you want to hang out with us. We're going to do a benefit for Ukraine. Sharon's involved in that. Hang on, Sharon. We're not going to talk about this in this moment, but I'm going to spotlight you. First, you have to
Unfortunately, I cannot be on video because I am in a car and I don't want to be distracted or anything, but I can talk. Is that okay?
Well, yeah, I'm not going to spotlight Chiffy.
Just put on gallery. Just put on gallery view.
Well, gallery is something that they decide, not I decide. But it's okay.
Yeah, sorry.
We see Chiffy and we hear you. Chiffy's Sharon's dog.
Are you able to hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you for the opportunity to tell.
Sure.
So I'm working on a story that's inappropriate. And the reason it's inappropriate is because it's not about me. But it starts with me. I'm lying in bed, my comfortable bed with my soft comforter and my warm blanket and pillow. And I cannot sleep because I'm thinking of children lying on dirt and concrete and not sleeping. And I'm thinking of those children lying awake and being afraid and hearing bombs and hearing terrifying noises. And I'm thinking of who they're with and who they're not with. And maybe they had to leave someone and they don't know when they're going to see them again. Or maybe they had to leave someone and they know for sure that they are not going to see them again. And this is not about me. And I am a privileged person in so many ways. And I am so blessed and so lucky. And I live in a privileged country. And I'm blessed and lucky just to be here, where our biggest problem is that we're paying a few more dollars for gas, but we know where our loved ones are, and we know where we can rest our head, and we know that we can go back to our home and it won't be bombed. And this isn't about me, but there's part of it that's about me, and it happened a long time before I was born. And that's that my grandmother is from the Ukraine, and her mother was killed in a pogrom. I think it was 1913 or 1914, when she was 3. And I know that the trip to America was a nightmare. And I know that her sister died. And I don't know what she died of. One person said maybe appendicitis. It was something that if she had had medicine, she might not have died. If she had had a mother caring for her, she might not have died. If anybody had been caring for her. Or maybe that's just the way it was. I'm coming from, on one side, the Ukraine, and on the other side from Germany. Oh, that's not much better for a Jew to be coming from Germany, where we had 142 relatives and distant relatives that were killed in the Holocaust, including my grandfather, my father's grandfather, including my father's cousins and his aunts. I was named after 3 people that were killed in the Holocaust. And look at me, I'm older than any of them, than all of them were when they died. It's not about me. And yet it's bringing up some very deep feelings for me. It brings up a feeling of depression and worthlessness, because here I am, not able to do anything. And if I send some money so that one family can have food for one night, there's meaning in that moment, but not in truth. There's no change. And what if I have a fundraiser and 10 families can have food and shelter for 10 nights? Still, there's no change in the falling apart of so many worlds. This is not about me. But what I want to do so much, I want to take the place of someone who can fight, because I can't. I'm a 55-year-old overweight American who's never held a gun in my life. But maybe there's a mother who can shoot a gun and I can hold her baby. I'm really, really good at taking care of babies. Maybe they need someone to organize the ammunition. Ammunition's got to be organized with all those people fighting. Maybe they need someone in the bomb shelter to entertain the kids. I am the bomb at entertaining kids. I don't mean to joke inappropriately, but I'm really good at it. Maybe there's some way that I could help. And I keep coming back to, why am I crying? Why am I not sleeping? This is not about me. But my heart is hurting and I want to help. I would almost rather that it was about me and that I was there and that I could help in some way. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Sharon, who is driving, I believe, to Ohio.
No,
right?
I pulled over. I'm driving from Ohio.
You were en route to Ohio, not in the moment.
Yeah.
That is a committed open micer right there. So all of you who are in your homes, okay, don't tell me you can't come. All right, thanks, Sharon.
Thank you.
For what it's worth, and again, like tonight's not the space or the time to comment on like the story, like as in like the structure of the story or the geekery.
Yeah.
Really interesting, because I heard a kind of like a in the works first shot at that idea. It was
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
Nice. Wow.
Thank you.
Really, little
I tried
spoken
to
wordy going on there off the highway. Okay, all right. Spoken word action. We got to get Shweta on the call here, so she's the spoken word artist.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
this is the worst segue ever, given what Sharon just shared, in part, in a way, because Sharon's, yeah, like, let's be honest, whatever we do, it's like nothing. But
Right.
Sharon, and we'll talk about this. Sharon, you're going to be back in North Carolina on Monday, no?
Yeah. I'm going to be back late tonight.
Okay. We are going to do a storytelling event with some people who are invited that you know, some people here, on May 1st, if we get the locale event, and it is a benefit for Ukraine. And I agree, like, fucking, what are we going to send, $1,000? What is that going to do? But I guess it's better than nothing. I don't know. I mean, I don't know. Maybe we're fucking like foolish, privileged, fools who are foolishly foolish. I don't know.
May I say something real quickly?
Yeah.
I've noticed, like, check like your public libraries and stuff, because my public library has a big bin to bring clothing and food and items for Ukraine. So I'd check your public libraries or something like that if you want to donate.
Yeah, thank you. Linda, I haven't forgotten about you. I just think your tech stuff might be problematic. I think that's everybody. Great. Thank you so much. That was really cool. Nice. Nice. If you have a better idea, I'm open to it, but I do think the best way, Zoom sucks for this. I really would rather just be in a room with people to talk, right? But does everyone know where the hand is? This thing? Where is that? Raise hand. I just raised my hand. Yeah, and we'll probably end up unmuting and talking, but I just don't want it to be everybody over each other. It gets a little clunky. So if you put your hand up, I'll say your name, and then you can share what you want to share, or maybe it's directed at somebody. Obviously, then unmute yourself. You're having a conversation. We'll work it out. Hopefully, people don't talk over each other too much. Let me let Mary Jo in. All right. I could get the order wrong. I think it was Barbara, and then Madeline, and then Patricia. Barbara?
Yeah, I just have a real brief question about the Friday session. Do you do them every Friday, or do you not send out like the email every Friday? We just have to remember that it's.
Yeah, I if I was a little bit better at being organized, I would send it. I don't have like much of a list, but here's what you need to know. Until further notice, every Friday, 3 p.m. Eastern, and it usually goes for 2 hours. You can come, tell your story, get feedback. And just to be clear, it's not me being the feedback guy. It's a group of people. It's just the way we do it. So yeah. Friday at 3. Reach out to me, and I'll gladly share with you the link. It's also on Zoom. It's a good group of people. And it's not really there to fix your stories unless you want that. Like, you can ask for that, but it's really more just trying to find the heart of your story, or maybe parts of your stories aren't clear, stuff like that hopefully you can take and then and apply. All right, I want to make sure. I wish they had like hand number 1, hand number 2, hand number 3. Doesn't work that way. All right, Madeline. Money helps you. I gotta unmute you.
Okay, no, I got it.
Yeah.
Hi everyone. Those stories were absolutely fabulous tonight. Really, I have beginning with Patricia. I've had tears in my eyes since the beginning. So, relating to a lot of things tonight. Thursday night, I will be telling a story on NAMI, and I will be interviewed for the work that I do as a severe trauma survivor, working with people to support them in their integration to the community. So I'm going to put the link into the chat, and you are all welcome to come on Thursday night. It's NAMI and North Carolina, because apparently everything happens in North Carolina or something. So,
or just Sean happens to live in North Carolina and he knows the woman who runs it. That's just
okay. Well, thank you. Thank you anyway.
So yeah, That's how I definitely put the link in there. And by the way, we can talk right now. It doesn't just need to be about the stories. I encourage that. But if you're involved with something, particularly if it's story related-ish, mental health related-ish, by all means, share that as well. By all means, share that as well. I think Patricia. Gotta unmute. Yeah, you can unmute yourself, I think. Oh, you have to unmute yourself.
World Storytelling Day is coming up, and I'm going to tell the butter cat, which I used to think was about outsmarting the cat, but really it's about communication. It's going to be a lot of fun. In the meantime, I've had an interesting conversation that some of you might enjoy. The difference between a draft and a version. A draft seems to suggest you haven't done it right yet. Something's wrong.
Version.
A version says, here's one way to look at it. Here's another. And you can smooth them out as you go. But if you're feeling intimidated because the story isn't quite right yet, think about it in terms of versions rather than drafts.
Nice. Or if you're like me with a tremendous amount of self-loathing, draft is just fine.
Yes.
Let me just stop